Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder, making sure that it's just a grocery bag back there and not a bunch of garbage. It was, in
Uh,
fact, not.
yeah, okay.
Definitely an important observation that warranted interrupting the opening of the stream.
That's all right. Well, you hear a weird noise in your home. It's like, oh, what was that?
Or you see a weird sight back there.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, welcome to Critique Corner, where Daniel and I watch whatever we happen to feel like watching.
Yes.
And provide our own varyingly skewed perceptions of it, ?
Yeah. Yeah, and we usually review something new or new-ish, and then something older, classic, and then we'll do some solo reviews. But of course, before we get into all of that, we do have our usual box office talk, although not really a whole lot to say in that regard.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting things here.
Uh,
First off, Beetlejuice is holding better than I was anticipating. Like a 50% drop after a surprisingly big first weekend.
Yeah, it's doing pretty well. I mean, although as we've noticed, the international box office for it isn't too good.
Yeah, I tweeted about it on Sunday. It apparently just hadn't gotten updated, so it wasn't quite as lopsided. But as of today, it's like 198 million in the U.S. and 76 million international.
Yeah,
Which on a 100 million budget, they could conceivably be in the black since they get a bigger chunk of the U.S. box office.
yeah, and of course you got all the licensing stuff with it, so yeah, who knows?
I guess it could conceivably be in the black for non advertising cost, at least.
Right? Yeah. Of course, if it does well enough, and they do a third one, we know what it's going to be called.
Right, and of course, it'll be the box office will just tank because people will go up to the box office and try to order the movie or the movie ticket out loud and be instantly transported to where Beetlejuice happens to be at the moment.
Yes.
Any other observations there? I would actually say that while you would want a bigger international box office, I think it would actually be a reasonable approach to make a movie for the domestic box office first, and then treat international like gravy.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah, because like you were saying, that they keep a bigger cut of it, of the gross, and it's more recognizable.
Yeah, and while I haven't seen it, after rewatching the original and listening to some negative takes on it, and some no, I don't think anybody's being glowing about it, but it sounds like it just scratches the right itch.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty of things where the idea is so strong that it makes up for execution.
Mm.
And Beetlejuice might just be it. Moving down the list, number 2, we have Speak No Evil, which that trailer was creepy. They had it before Deadpool Wolverine when I went to see that, and that's the one where Professor X from the new movies is an abusive weirdo who may have cut the tongue out of his son's mouth.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because it was in the trailer.
Oh, okay.
With his mouth wide open as he's showing it off to the nice person who's trying to help him.
Oh, yeah, no.
Not my kind of movie.
No.
I don't know if 11 million opening for that, it can't be too big of a budget because, horror movie.
Right.
15 million budget. Yeah, this thing's going to do fine.
Yeah.
Actually, it was kind of interesting for a few weeks there where we we had the summer box office in full swing, we didn't really see quite the same spamming of horror movies we'd seen earlier in the year,
No, it's been pretty quiet in that regard. Of course, next month might be a different story.
right? Because Spooktober.
Yeah.
Which one thing I've been noticing the last few years is that they launch a lot of horror movies in September, and I guess it's because there's such a big pileup that you don't want to compete too directly for any particular weekend in October. So your hope is probably just to catch a march on them and show up in September, and then have your tail end be in October.
Right. Yeah.
Number
Yeah,
three,
a bit like Christmas movies.
exactly. Like you launch in November so that you aren't uh, butting up against actual Christmas movies.
Right. Yeah.
Or yeah, later release Christmas movies. And of
Yeah.
course, you would never launch a Christmas movie on Christmas itself, because that means that past the first weekend, you now have a movie about Christmas that's playing in January and February.
Yeah.
Not a good look.
No.
But what is a good look is Deadpool and Wolverine just continuing to plug away and make money.
Yes.
It crossed 1.3 billion by a hair.
Mm,
So second only to Inside Out 2.
yes. So Disney's actually having a good time right now.
Well, they just went back to proven French, or actually no, proven movies, because Inside Out only had the one movie, so it can't be. I wouldn't have considered it a franchise at that point.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that one is that there's apparently some controversy and accusations that Disney forced them to tone down the main character having gay tendencies.
Oh. Uh,
So they may have been trying to preemptively avoid being Bud Lighted.
oh. Yeah. well, well,
Yeah,
you gotta do what you gotta do to make money.
yeah. Speaking of doing what you got to do to make money, the Daily Wire movie "Am I a Racist" is at its first weekend, and it's actually been performing pretty decently day to day, considering it's only in AMC theaters
Mm,
and small. It was budgeted to go straight to their Daily Wire Plus streaming service.
yeah. Yeah. Well, at least they're releasing one of their movies in the theater, because usually with their movies, yeah, they just dump it on their own streaming service. It's like, how are you making money off of that if you just put it
It,
on your own streaming service?
yeah, like $100 a year. I think they have to be treating their entertainment division as just a loss leader and vanity project compared to their new stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Uh, what surprised me about this one is apparently Matt Walsh makes a good Borat. Like, that's apparently the format, is that you see that he has kind of longer hair here. He just put on I think he had a man bun or a ponytail, and he just pretended to be a DEI guy.
Yeah.
And so he got people to he just kind of sat down with people with interesting interviews.
Yeah, and apparently it paid a lot of them quite a bit of money to do those interviews too.
Yeah. Right, because he is like, here's the thing: diversity is not a scam, but DEI kind of is.
Yes.
Moving back, speaking of vaguely conservative movies, we've got Reagan
Yes.
uh, continuing to leg out. 23 million for a smallish documentary is not bad at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got The Killer's Game, which both of those movies outdid its first weekend. It's a Dave Bautista movie where he's like a hitman who has a terminal illness and decides to take a hit out on himself because he's dying.
Uh,
So
uh,
apparently nobody thought that little sound you just made there is apparently the audience's reaction since
yeah.
it's opening to 2.6 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, we should call 2024 Lionsgate and the no good, very bad year.
Yeah. Looking at you, Expendables 4.
Oh god, was that last year or this year?
Or no, oh no, I think that was last
Yeah,
year. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's It's Borderlands, The Crow. They've
Uh,
had some other stinkers this year too. I just can't remember
yeah,
them. Moving down, Alien Romulus chugging away. Mid-range result.
yeah.
It Ends With Us is slowing down finally after 6 weeks.
Mm. 140, almost 145 million domestic. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
this
yeah.
thing had like no budget,
No, like yeah,
25
25
million.
million. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure it also had the desired side effect of boosting book sales.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, then we got The Forge, which I don't know what that
Oh,
is.
that's that faith-based movie.
Oh, right. I think we talked about it last week, and every week I forget what it is.
Yeah. 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 That's all right.
4 weeks out, 24 million. Yeah, not bad. Then we got
Yeah.
Fathom Events doing God's Not Dead and God We Trust. I'm going to guess, based on the reputation of the other movies in this series, that it's kind of cringy and not exactly helping the cause.
Yeah, I would guess that too. Yeah.
That's here. Then we just got some holdovers, Despicable Me, Twisters, and I hadn't realized this movie had come out last weekend. Uh, and I wonder if it's still available to see. Dan to Dan First Encounters, which that's a manga that I had read a couple of volumes of last year.
Mm.
I forget exactly how it works, but it's like it's supernatural and UFOs attacking at the same time, and I forget if you've got the if it's either the girl is a sci-fi nut, but she has a natural attraction to the supernatural, and the guy is a supernatural nut, but he gets abducted by aliens. It's like there's some sort of cross in their paranormal interests.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds yeah, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I didn't really follow up with it, but good on them for getting a movie. Although it's interesting because I hadn't realized that they'd had a TV show yet.
Yeah,
For what?
I haven't heard anything about it.
Let's see here. Dan to Dan streaming release date. When do you come out? October 3rd, so very soon. Oh no. Oh
What?
no. What if this is one of those scummy things like they keep doing with Demon Slayer, where they
Oh,
just package some episodes and put it in the theater?
no, maybe.
Because the description here just sounds like the opening parts of the story. Oh, that's exactly what they did.
Oh,
Well, $1 million for a special event thing like that. Yeah, I guess it's a way to generate some interest.
yeah.
Speaking of not generating interest, I think we can move on to our first review.
Yes.
Horizon: An American Saga. Kevin Costner's new Western that was supposed to be a four-parter. Second part is ready to go, but the third and fourth are on hold because they put this thing out and it bombed.
Yes, it did. Yeah, and this was the movie too that Costner quit Yellowstone to do.
Yeah. Worldwide gross of 31 million after launching in June. And this is not like a March release. This is supposed to be a tentpole summer release.
Yeah. What was the budget on that? 50 million.
Yeah, not
Ooh.
as bad as it could be, but and again, I have to assume that the real budget for the whole four-part saga is at least 200 million.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There. Yeah. I would guess so. Thereabouts. Yeah. Um. Oh, you're muted.
I'm trying to, I was going to have some Algonquin subtitles
Oh. Oh. Okay.
so Daniel, I think that we had kind of similar takes on this one. I
Mhm.
feel very conflicted about it because I wanted to like it more than I did.
Yeah. The I would say the first hour of the movie I thought was really good. It it definitely clearly established like obviously the time frame of it. You know, it starts off in 1859, and then we time jump 4 years to 1863. Um, and you know, they established pretty well that there's this little settlement in Arizona, and it's in was it Apache
Yeah.
territory?
Yep.
Yeah, and then the Apaches come and wipe out the settlement.
Yeah, and and the opening is interesting because they don't have like an announcer come out the year 1859. They
Hmm.
they use environmental storytelling, visual cues. They're just very subtle about it, and it rewards close watching.
Yes, yeah, and you pointed it out too that I'm with you. You know, I'm glad I watched this on a 4K TV because it's very vibrant.
Yeah, the color's amazing. The sheer amount of detail you can make out is spectacular. Yeah, even though we're gonna have some bad things to say about it, it's definitely a feast for the eyes.
Yeah, it is. And I could see where Costner was trying to go with it. He was trying to do like you know, like how the West was won, and you know,
Hmm.
Once Upon a Time in the West. You know, that type of a grand epic western is, you know, the feel that he was going for with it. And at least in the scope of it, it's certainly fits that. But in terms of the storytelling, like, not so much, because um really, actually, I kind of hate to say it, an hour into the movie is when Costner finally shows up, and that's kind of when it gets shaky.
Yeah, because yeah, first hour you establish the conflict with the local tribe because you have a couple of people out there doing some surveying. They have sort of an amusing line where the two Apache boys are saying, you know, what are they doing out there? Oh, it's just some sort of game that the white eyes play.
Yeah.
And then they proceed to descend upon them. A Catholic priest buries them, leaving two or three crosses. I'm not.
Yeah,
It occurs to me there were only two bodies that he found, right?
I think there were three.
Were there three? Okay.
Yeah,
I was trying to thinking, oh, is there a mystery with the third cross there? I guess not. No.
yeah,
But so you have that opening. You cut to the present 1863,
yeah,
and you have this very well done raid on this community there.
yeah. Yeah, and you kind of establish like a lot of the people who are living there. You've got the one family, the Kittredge family, was kind of the main focus of on this part of the film. And the wife and the mom is played by Sienna Miller, who's she's actually a British actress, and she's been
Oh,
in. She was on a TV show that my family and I watched in the early 2000s called Keen Eddie. It's a very obscure TV show.
yeah, no, I never even heard of it.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he had. Um, and so yeah, so the what ends up happening is their house gets a bunch of the settlers go to their house and hold up in there, but then of course the Apaches set fire to the roof, and then, you know, bad things happen, and then she and the daughter go into this hiding hole underneath the house.
Right,
Uh,
almost like a root cellar or something.
yeah, and they survive, but unfortunately, her husband and their son don't make it.
Yeah, it's kind of horrifying how they survive because they have to like take was it a gun barrel or a
Yeah, it's a gun
pipe,
barrel.
a
Yeah,
gun barrel, and poke a hole up so they could just breathe because it
yeah,
collapsed on them.
yeah, and what also happens too is one of a kid from there manages to get on a horse and rides out to the nearest U.S. military outpost to get help, and then they get there. Of course, by the time they get there, it's too late.
Right. Which the local captain or lieutenant or whatever he was is very clear. You are sold a bill of goods. This area is indefensible because of the terrain. The Apache know this. Whoever sold you this land knows this. We'll give you an escort out of here, but if you choose to stay around, the military cannot save you.
Right. Yeah. And that was Sam Worthington was the
Oh, right. I knew he seemed familiar.
yeah
He is
yeah
the people will know him probably best from Justified.
yeah and Avatar.
Wait, am I thinking? I'm thinking of the wrong guy. That was
Oh,
Timothy.
you're
I'm thinking
thinking
Timothy Oliphant.
Timothy Olyphant. Yeah, yeah.
But wasn't he in this one too, or am I thinking? Oh, I know we watched something that had him in it recently.
Well, I watched that Terminator animated series.
Oh,
He's
that
the voice
okay.
of the Terminator.
Never mind. I'm being dumb.
That's
Here's the
right.
thing: Sam Worthington leaves so little taste in the mouth that if you told me it was any other sort of journeyman actor, I would have believed you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and then so it seems like we've established a lot of elements for a really cool ending fight, right?
Right.
Or ending end game for this because you've got a young boy who's been traumatized by the events, who's out. He basically ends up joining a posse and is out for revenge.
Hmm.
Um, you've got the wife and daughter who have survived the horrific of the Kitteridges, who have survived this horrible incident and
Yeah.
are trying to be on the mend. You've got the local military captain trying to hold things together in the middle,
Hmm.
and then you've got a renegade brave, I guess you'd call him, or war chief. Not
Yeah.
he's not war chief. He's not the chief. He's like this, basically a guy who's like, hey, the Westerners are coming in, and uh, we don't care for that, so we have to fight back. To
Yeah.
which the chief goes, yeah, they they can't tell us apart, so you're just going to bring all their wrath down upon us.
Yeah.
So he has his group that is willing to go out and stir the pot more and do more raiding.
Hmm.
So you've got all these chess pieces on the board for really cool uh, rumination on revenge, cycles of violence, uh, imperialism, uh, trauma, getting over things.
Yeah.
And then the movie just completely forgets that for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got this other you got this other plot line with uh
And I should note, the movie starts on this plot line back in 1859.
oh, that's right. Yeah. And then just
Because I had to remind myself of that when I was watching it.
yeah, yeah. So this plot line starts off where the woman in the picture that's Jenna Malone is the actress. I'm trying to think what she's been in. She's been in a lot of stuff, but she was the spider lady in in Rebel Moon. Um,
Oh,
yeah. She goes in. It starts off with her. She gets her baby son. She shoots her baby daddy, presumably because he's a jerk, and then rides away. And then the guy's two sons have to go find her, and then we forget all about them for an hour.
right. We forget all about them for an hour with the interesting storyline, not to tip my hand too much.
But yeah, yeah, and then they, we cut to that happened in Montana, and then we cut to Wyoming, and that's where we meet Costner, who shows up with a bunch of other people who are like horse guys, I guess.
Horse traders, yeah.
Horse traders, yeah. Um, who is Kevin Costner? Was he doing, and why is he there? Well, to quote Critical Drinker, don't know.
Yeah. He has kind of stumbled into this family squabble.
Yeah,
And where the first hour of the movie had a lot of quiet moments, a lot of brutal action, a lot of awesome scenes. The second hour is
yeah,
is the nicest way I can put it. Because I can't think
yeah,
of a single conversation in that hour that was actually interesting. you have this young woman who is a lady of the, well, not lady of the evening because she goes out and tries to get her Johns in the day. So lady of the day, I guess.
Oh yeah, she's a town bicycle.
Yes. Uh, uh, and she's out there looking. She's living with her sister, who is the sister the woman in the on the poster there. I
Yeah,
wasn't quite. Yeah.
yeah, that's
It's like she's living with her, and it's not her husband. At least I don't think they're married. He just seems. I'm gonna be very mean here. Uh, the guy is kind of the beta buck that she ended up with,
right. Pretty much, yeah.
and and they talk. They just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like there is a very long scene where you establish the lady of the morning's rivalry with the town telegraph operator. Like, and she accuses him of not being literate or something.
Yeah, yeah. And
Like,
yeah,
I think that was supposed to be charming? Question mark.
yeah. Yeah, and then there's this whole sequence where she's trying to, convince Costner to come up to the house, to her house, later in the day, and that's which leads me to believe that, yeah, I know a lot of people have said this is like a passion project for Costner, but I'm beginning to think it's more of a vanity project.
Except that a vanity project, like you'd expect the vain person to be in the movie before the first hour comes up.
That's
You,
true. Yeah,
it's weird. It's like his character feels like a non-entity, and I think it's because after that opening and setup of this three-way drama between the settlers, the Apache, and the army, it's like,
yeah,
what the hell is this? Is kind of your reaction.
yeah,
And there's a very, and then those plots just get carried on. Like, we do eventually remember that the little boy is being brought along on this violent group that is out to get some scalps as revenge. Uh,
mhm,
you do find out what happened to the woman's baby daddy and his sons trying to track her down. You
yeah,
do find out you do find out what happened to the Kitteridges as they recover, but it's
yeah.
just presented in this way that it's not movie pacing.
Right. No, a lot of people pointed this out that this would have been better as a streaming series than a movie because
Right.
it's paced that way. Yeah.
Right. It's broken up into it. They even have some things repeat a few times in ways that would make, like, I'll give an example. So the observation is made on two different occasions by two different people that you can't tell where a scalp came from. So
Yeah.
this, like, Sam Worthington's character is talking with with the posse that's out for revenge, and he's like, it occurs to me that you can't really tell a Apache scalp apart from a Yuma scalp apart from even a Mexican scalp if you're of a mind to it.
Yeah. And you can't tell if it's a man, a woman, a child. Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on in the movie, you have in the middle of a rainstorm, you have the posse around a campfire, and somebody basically makes the same observation just in a way that's like, yo, this is hard. We should just we should just take the easy way out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's in under normal circumstances, that would be a movie that would be a scene that would end up on the cutting room floor to try to, you know, cut down the running time a bit.
Right. And the thing is that you can have that sort of echo in a story. In fact, it can be a very nice callback. And it's just that it can't be the same length both times.
Hmm.
Like, I could even see, like, hey, remember that conversation y'all were having with the captain about what, the scalps? Boys are starting to get restless. I'm thinking that maybe we take the captain's advice,
Yeah.
even though he didn't mean it as advice. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that would be a way to go about it. Um, but here's the thing: if it was a streaming show that was coming out weekly, that
Mhm.
would have actually been a helpful reminder at the start of episode 4,
Right. Yeah.
because this is a 3-hour movie that you could easily turn into 3 or 4 TV or streaming episodes, depending on how you decide to cut it up.
Yeah. I mean, let's see, like 3 hours.
Eh,
Let's say you do like 45-minute episodes.
Right? Maybe like you make the first hour its own episode because you're doing a lot of setup there.
Yeah, you could do like 3 or 4 episodes, I think. Yeah.
And then like the second episode would be the stuff in the small town, and it wouldn't feel as abrupt and like it's taking you away from what you care about, because new episode, new expectations.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think. I mean, it's yeah. I'm very torn with it. Yeah. I think this could have been a lot better if the stories had been a little more um, interconnective. I think, as
Hmm.
opposed to them being just almost separate plot lines. Now, it could very well be that do start interconnecting in either the next one or possibly 3 or 4 if they make those.
Yeah, honestly think that their best approach at this point would be to scrap the idea of putting it out in theaters, or maybe you like make it a Fathom event. But then you just take the elements and you turn it into a HBO series, because this could be a very good HBO series.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Uh, I think some of my frustration with the second and third hours was more just a pacing and feeling jerked out of the flow I was caring about,
yeah,
than it necessarily being bad. On the other hand, I do feel like some of the conversations in the second hour and third hour were a bit on the nose, question mark.
yeah. Of course, again, I'm trying to remember all of them. Of course, there's another plot line we forgot to mention, which is the one in I think they're in Kansas, where you got this caravan of settlers going through, uh,
Oh yeah,
led
with the
by
Kittredge family and
yeah, the other Kittredge family.
not the Kittredge. He had this British couple.
Right, yeah, yeah, and Luke Wilson is like leading them.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm going to admit something that is going to
Mhm.
sound really silly. I had actually been under the misapprehension that that was like, for a while there, that that was like the military guiding the people out of Horizon who didn't want to be there anymore.
Oh,
That now makes much more sense.
yes.
I missed the whole Kansas connection.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it said on the when they showed the caravan, I think it said Kansas territory.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
must have been looking away at that point, because I'm not gonna lie. After like when I was jolted out of it, I was occasionally watching distracted.
Oh, yeah. Although it seemed a little weird because it said it was Kansas, but it's very hilly and mountainy for Kansas.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
I've driven through Kansas, by the way. When they say it's flat as a pancake, they're not lying. It's flat.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the Kansas territory encompassed some modern states that are a bit more mountainous.
Oh yeah, maybe like Colorado or
You know,
yeah,
I don't know the borders of the original Kansas territory.
yeah. I'm trying to remember who.
Well, regardless, that I think the issue is that you have some fine storylines that would be totally suited to a Western, but they drag each other down.
Yeah.
The reach exceeds the grasp, at least in the series, or excuse me, in the form of 4 movies.
Hmm.
I think they should take what they have, retool it into an HBO Max series, and again, I think there's nothing wrong with doing a Fathom event where you come out with the parts
Movies. Yeah.
as movies, but to make a little bit of extra money. But like, and we forgot the weirdest part, which is you hit the end of the movie, and there's like a 10-minute montage of next time on Horizon.
Yeah. Well, they don't even say next time on Horizon. They just start playing it, and it's like, what? What
And
is this?
it was jarring, even though I knew that that's exactly what they did. I
Yeah,
just had underestimated how long that section would go on for.
yeah, same here. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm watching it going by, and I'm like, okay, well, how much longer do I have
The
to?
hell is this?
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah,
oh well.
yeah.
So I don't think I can recommend this.
No, I can't either, and I will probably not be watching part two unless
Yeah, unless we hear something amazing, or unless, if they chop it up into the format that the writing and editing already seems to want to be.
Yeah,
Who knows? Maybe Kevin Costner just got too used to playing Yellowstone and forgot how to write movies.
yeah, maybe.
But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a transition. Hey Daniel, do you like cheese in it?
Yes.
Because it's fun to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so my solo review for this week is the classic animated movie Heavy Metal, which was of course the inspired by the magazine comic book series of the same name. Although in Europe it was called Metal Hurlant.
Metal
Um,
Harlot?
Harlant, thank you.
Huh.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, but yeah, so what kind of I mean, I remember seeing this cover in video stores,
Oh
and
yeah, no, all
yeah,
over the place.
yeah, and I remember seeing, like, occasionally it may pop up on television, and I'd see the animation. I kind of go, "What is this? This looks weird." Um, but so I finally got around to watching it, and what was surprising to me was some of the people who were involved in the movie. So it was actually one of the producers of the movie was Ivan Reitman.
Oh.
Yeah, and some of the voice actors in this, John Candy.
Oh yeah, I'd heard about John Candy being in it.
Yeah, he plays several characters in the movie, and then Harold Ramis and Eugene Levy are in there too.
Okay,
Uh,
so there's definitely some connections with that sort of 70s, 80s comedy scene.
right, yeah. Um, but but yeah, so the movie is basically, well, not basically, it is an anthology. Um, it's got I'm trying to remember how many six segments, I think, with a wraparound story to it. And the movie basically revolves around this green orb called the Lochnar, and it's basically it's just pure evil,
Hmm.
and it pops up in all these different stories. And the first story is kind of interesting. It has that uh, kind of like film noir feel to it.
Hmm.
It's about a cab driver in New York who helps out a beautiful woman because she's got the Lochnar, and and I'm convinced that's where Luc Besson got the idea for the Fifth Element, because it's very similar. Like the cab driver is even a lot like Bruce Willis in the Fifth Element.
Hmm.
Um, and but yeah, the segments are really interesting. Pretty for the most part. I mean, a couple of them are kind of like, all right. Like the one with the B-52 bombers, which that's kind of the one that people remember. They see that segment, and that's when the theme song Heavy Metal starts playing in the background.
My ticket to midnight.
Yeah. um, and but yeah, it's and another segment that I thought was interesting was the one with Captain Stern, who's this like square jawed, he's got the Superman curly, dark hair
Hmm.
curl in it, and he's like, oh ha, ha. But he's just a total scumbag. And he's on trial for all these various horrible crimes. And I'm watching the segment and I'm thinking, is that where Garth Ennis got the idea for Homelander? Because it's a lot like it.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, the of course the one of the segment I think the two segments I like the most, even though like one of them's kind of weird. Although, well, what am I saying? A lot of the movie's kind of weird. Um, but
Right. You're adapting a sci-fi anthology magazine from the UK, so
yeah, yeah. Um, but one is this segment where they have this. There's this alien ship shows up over the Pentagon because the aliens have there's these two aliens that have this robot in there who's pretending to be a scientist. Who says there's no credible evidence that we're the that there is other life in the universe. We're the only ones here. And then you hear the people in the Pentagon really, oh, that's great, yeah, yeah. And then you hear John Candy say, oh, that's really very reassuring. And they said this as an alien ship is parked over the Pentagon, and then the robot gets sucked up into this tube, and also this buxom woman gets shot up there too, and you have these two aliens and the robot, and then the two aliens are voiced by are Eugene Levy and Harold Ramis, and then the robot's John Candy, and the two aliens just get high on space cocaine. And the robot voiced by John Candy bones the woman.
Daniel, you're saying something that's very confusing to me
Yeah,
because I thought that cartoons were strictly for children.
I know. Yeah. Well,
So
this one definitely isn't.
it is always weird when you run across the odd American uh, cartoon that isn't meant for children. Also, as I'd look it up, I am shocked that Ralph Bakshi was not involved with this.
I know. Yeah. Because it's definitely in his style. But no, no, he was not involved in this in any way whatsoever. But the last segment in the movie, which is kind of the standout, and that's the one featuring the poster girl, Tarna. So there's this. So the Lochnar, I guess the Lochnar's powers are kind of like not really clearly defined.
Just whatever
Um,
the plot needs.
right. So what it does is well, the entire time the way the stories are told is the Lochnar is uh, showing these visions to this little girl whose dad was an astronaut and lands on who's flying a space shuttle and then lands on the planet in a hot rod in space. It's whole sequence. um, and he's presenting the story to her, these stories to her, and then he gets to this last one with Tarna, and because well, I don't necessarily want to spoil it, but the Lognar goes into this volcano, and then it basically mutates these people and makes them evil, and they go and wipe out this city, and the village elders of this city call for uh, 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 the last Tarakian warrior, and that's Tarna, and of course, you have this great sequence where she's completely naked and swims across a pool, and puts her clothes on because it's very essential to the plot.
It,
Um,
it was the basis for an entire South Park episode.
yes, it was.
That was the fun to do bit at the start was episode where characters would get high on cat urine, and then when they did, they saw heavy metal, but everything was boobs.
Yes. You like my daughter's amazing boobs.
Uh,
Yes, yes. um and yeah, so then so then Tarna gets on her her animal that she flies on is kind of like a somewhere between like a pterodactyl and a couldn't really can't really, you're the
what's the name of the thing again?
I don't remember.
What's the name of her again?
Tarna, Taarna. And so she gets on her, that she flies off to the city, and then of course the city's completely wiped out. So instead of saving them, she has to go on a quest for revenge, and that's basically the rest of that segment is her going after the bad guys.
Okay, so it's basically kind of like a pterodactyl, just stylized.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, that's the other thing too is time is not really the time period that these stories take place in is never really defined. You really don't know if it's in the future, if it's in the past, or
yeah, what's interesting about this is I found a clearer image of it. It almost looks like it's a pteranodon mixed with an airplane because it has like a tail with two fins on it.
ah, and I didn't notice that when I was watching it, but yeah,
Gee,
wow.
I can't imagine what else in this image would have distracted your attention.
Yeah, yeah, I know, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Interesting thing about Tarna is that she's mute. She
Hmm.
never speaks. Um, but yeah, this movie's. I mean, I can see why people enjoy it. I mean, it definitely has a, a niche to it. If you like sci-fi mixed with some bits of fantasy, like Ralph Bakshi esque animation. Yeah,
Bakshi, I forget how his name is
Bakshi.
pronounced.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Bakshi or Bakshi. Um,
Bakshi.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and if you're not squeamish about nudity or extreme violence, yeah, give this a watch. I would say,
Hmm.
yeah, interesting. Although I haven't heard good things about Heavy Metal 2000. So, but
I mean, okay, I'm going to be mean here because there are some exceptions. Most likely, if a thing came out around the year 2000 and it got the title 2000, it
that's
isn't good.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's not. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I actually ended up buying it digitally.
Hmm.
I may. I don't know if it's gotten a 4K release yet. I'll have to look into that. If it has, I'll definitely be picking it up. But yeah,
Well, yeah, I've always been curious to watch it. I just haven't ever gotten around to it for whatever reason.
yeah,
Um, Definitely not a surfeit of taste,
yeah,
but yeah, it's kind of funny how um, we made a little bit of fun of American Saga for feeling disjointed. Just make it an anthology if you're if you're not going to tie things together right away.
yeah. The good point. Yeah,
But speaking of things that are a bit more jointed,
yes.
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
And I did intentionally choose the Japanese cover when I found it because it amused me that that existed.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a good cover. That's a good poster. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the American one just with Japanese text.
Mm,
So Daniel, we observed last week that we had a rarity here, a
mhm.
classic movie that you had seen, or excuse me, that I had seen that you had not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So mark it on your calendars, folks, because it doesn't happen very often.
Now, usually he's the one bringing classics of the past to me,
Mm,
where we happen to have seen the same things. But
yeah.
um, this is an interesting movie because it Beetlejuice can you can have a very different outlook on Beetlejuice depending on what your first exposure to it was. Because Daniel, did you ever watch the Beetlejuice cartoon?
Bits and pieces of it. I don't remember it very well. I think I would probably watch it like if it came on before Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, I want to say that I caught it on reruns on Nickelodeon. Um, I can't say that it left too strong of an impression on me, except that both times I've seen this movie, I've been a little bit startled as to who the real main characters are.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because like for the cartoon, the main characters were, was it Lydia? Yeah,
Yeah.
Lydia and Beetlejuice, and they would have adventures, but they really aren't in this movie nearly as much as the real main characters.
Yeah. When I was watching this, I'm like, the plot reminded me a bit of Hellraiser, um, and allow me to explain. And that movie is about a woman who's she's married to a guy, but she was having an affair with the guy's brother, and the brother is like hiding up in their attic, and his he because he's hiding from the Cenobites, and the Cenobites are not really that's Pinhead was one of them, and they're not in that movie very much. And they're not even, and they're kind of like secondary villains, and that's kind of where I got made the connection there with the between those two movies because, like you were saying, Beetlejuice isn't in it that much, and
which might be to his benefit, but we'll talk about that later.
yeah, but yeah, the focus of the movie is mainly on the couple, Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis,
Adam and Barbara, respectively.
Adam and Barbara, yeah. Um,
Which I will say first off, it was strange seeing Alec Baldwin that young and skinny.
yeah, it was, yeah. um, and I think this movie was, I mean, it was before he was even really a big name star. I don't think people really knew who he was back then, or he was just getting to that point.
This couldn't have hurt his movie career. Now he was this was 1987, right? Yeah,
88,
1988. 88.
88,
Okay,
yeah.
so this was a year before Batman came out, which
Right.
Just to give a quick plug, Midnight's Edge has an interesting retrospective on this movie and the road it took for us to get to the sequel.
Yeah.
Uh, it at one point it passed through the hands of the creator of, or at least the director of the Freddy Krueger movies before ended up going back to Tim Burton. I think that Michael Keaton just seemed to have an early career where nobody thought he could do anything.
Yeah.
I think I remember there being like some question about if he was right for the character.
Yeah. Well, they were definitely saying that when he was cast as Batman.
Yeah,
Um,
that's just so funny.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, up to that point, I mean, he had done like Mr. Mom,
Yeah,
uh, Gung Ho. What was that movie with him and Henry Winkler where they're in a they're working at a funeral home.
I don't know the name of that one.
Yeah, but yeah, he was mainly just doing all these like kind of goofy comedies. And then yeah, then he gets this movie, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, so yeah, so now I think we've set the stage a bit. All right, so it occurs to me that neither of us had any compunction whatsoever about completely spoiling Horizon and American Saga, because I think we both came away with that with a negative opinion and wanted to talk about why we had a negative opinion.
Yeah, yeah,
But this movie, on the other hand, if you've somehow not seen it, I think I want to preserve your ability to go in and enjoy it before we start talking broad details.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you might go, DB, what kind of egomaniac are you, where you assume that you're going to be somebody's introduction to Beetlejuice? Like, I don't know, man. I think that this show is proof that somebody can go through life a long ways and then start picking up on movies that everybody else had watched decades ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hadn't seen it until last weekend, so
Exactly.
yeah,
So, in broad strokes, in a small town in New England, Adam and Barbara, Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis are living a happy not singleton, not sing,
uh,
well,
Dink.
dink lifetime. Yeah,
Yeah,
dual, or actually, we don't know that they had dual income. But either ways,
yeah,
they they're a young happy couple. They're talking about having a kid, and then they have a car crash. And what's interesting about the car, like they did a very good job of setting up that they died and didn't realize it.
yeah. Yeah, they die, and then they go back to their house, but everything in their house is different, and it's it's not quite right. And then they find a book called what was the title of it?
Like it was something like a guide for the recently departed or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, and they quickly realize, but then they quickly realize that they are in fact dead, and they get they're reading through the book, and it just doesn't make any sense to them.
Yeah, it's
'Cause-
described as reading like a repair manual.
right, and so then as they're still in their house, another family buys their house and moves in. They're from New York, and it's I can't remember the dad's name, but it's the principal from Ferris Bueller, who's a real scumbag in real
Catherine
life.
O'Hara.
Well, yeah. And then Catherine O'Hara, Catherine O'Hara is this like postmodern sculpture artist, and she's typical New York artsy type, you know.
Right. She thinks that she's the great. She is in fact not.
No, yeah, yeah. You see her, yeah. You look at her sculptures, and it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And they have a daughter, Lydia, who's played by Winona Ryder, kind of channeling Wednesday Adams.
Yeah, I did keep thinking about how it's like in the late 80s, early 90s, there was this making fun of horror aesthetic that a lot of movies and TV shows had.
Yeah, I think they were. Yeah, I think they were trying to do something different with the genre. They're trying to do the horror comedy thing. Although, according to Joe Bob Briggs, the key to a good horror comedy is that it has to be 80% horror and 20% comedy. Because if you do it the other way, you're trying to make a cult movie before it's actually a cult movie.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Hmm.
Now let's see here. So it's basically the two newly deads, haha,
Mhm.
trying to scare these people out of their house, even though they can't. Most of them can't see them. Lydia can because she's a goth.
Yeah. Yeah, and they even mentioned in the book that most humans don't want to see them, or not that they can't see them, or it's just they choose not to, or something like that. Um,
Yeah. So just talking like from a. Oh yeah. So it occurs to me our summary has left out the title character because he's actually,
yeah.
again, he's not in the movie very much. It's unique to have a movie titled after the villain like
You're
this.
right. Yeah. Yeah, he pops up every now and then. Like the first time you see him is in this TV commercial where it's just kind of like one of those regional TV commercials that you see for like some car dealership or
Uh, Wow. Daniel, did you know that the Critique Corner podcast is streaming right now?
Oh.
Thanks, YouTube, for the timely notification.
Yes, 1 hour into the freaking stream.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, like just a cheap local commercial.
Yeah.
And Michael Keaton had so much fun here. You can just tell.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so then they finally Adam and what was her name?
Barbara.
Barbara. Yeah, Adam and Barbara finally decide to meet Beetlejuice, and to try to ask for his help in getting rid of the new owners of their house. But Beetlejuice is weird.
Yes. He's like an R-rated Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. There's even an F-bomb in there, and I'm like, whoa, this movie's PG.
Yeah, 1988 was built different, man.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so that there's your premise. These two people are trying to scare the living out of their house. They're dealing with the idiosyncrasies of their new neighbors, and they've introduced this chaotic element into things to try to drive them out.
Mhm.
So, non-spoiler thoughts. I think the strongest part of this movie, well, strongest part of this movie is definitely the visual design.
Oh yeah.
Tim Burton has, or either Tim Burton or whoever did his set designs back in the day, had a very particular style. And if
Yeah.
you had seen Nightmare Before Christmas before seeing this, you'll keep going, oh, okay, I know that style.
Yeah. Well, even his Batman movies have that, kind of unique look to them. Um,
Right, just that kind of lost a little bit of it because it had to conform to something like reality. But
yeah.
like this thing over here where you have this bird thing with a comb on the back.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the characters who has stretched their skin out to try to look horrifying.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of unique.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of really great claymation and stop motion in there, like the giant worm that you see in the wherever that desert area that they're in.
Apparently, it's on Saturn somehow? Question mark.
Saturn. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and the movie is not afraid to do something wacky and off the wall just for its own sake. So it's very refreshing that way.
Yeah.
It also has a maybe this might be a case where watching Horizon over 2 days positively colored my opinions. I think this
Yeah.
thing is a brisk 92 minutes.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Yeah.
No, and you can see why an executive at the time would go, "We need to milk this for all it's worth. We need an animated show."
Yeah. Merchandising, where the real money from the movie's made.
Yeah, so I would say maybe the smallest children shouldn't watch this, but I
Mhm.
would think that at least 10 and up would be good.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh, Now there is a bit where there's like a fantasy brothel
Oh yeah.
uh, that you might have to answer some awkward questions about if you have a kid around.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it's just kind of vaguely creepy, but it's like good wins in the end, is
Yes.
which I
Yeah.
think is like one of the defining features of whether something is suitable for smallest children or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, all right, let's get into some spoiler thoughts. And I don't necessarily think we need to go blow by blow with the plot, more just like what are things that you would want to highlight and pick apart a little bit that you don't necessarily want somebody to be ruined on before they watch the movie.
Uh. Well. I will say, like, Lydia's relationship with Adam and Barbara, I thought was really interesting. Because she's the goth girl who clearly doesn't fit in with her own mother and father, but the two of them seem to get her. You know,
Mhm.
um, and the other thing I really liked was the whole use with so Adam's got this miniature of the town in the
Mhm.
attic, and that's kind of used as like the backdrop, kind of like the backdrop of a lot of stuff. That's where Beetlejuice is hanging out.
Yeah, he just shrunk himself down, and when he wants to talk with somebody, he shrinks them down. And they made an excellent set to just replicate the look of this miniature
Yeah,
because
yeah,
like the grass is some sort of it's like a yoga like a stiff golf mat or yoga mat or something,
yeah, yeah, and
and they have
yeah,
they've blown it up to have like a human sized version of that for those shots.
right, yeah. Um, well, I will say, like, Beetlejuice gets really he can get a little raunchy at times.
Yeah.
Like, there's they ask him like, "Well, can you be scary?" He's like, "Oh, can I be scary?" What? Oh, okay.
The other thing is that he does kind of like, given his perversions, the whole Freddy Krueger connection does seem kind of fitting.
Mhm.
Just like a kid friendly version of that. That's not quite as murderous.
Yeah, and he definitely has the quips and one-liners like Freddy Krueger.
What I think is interesting is that I don't think they ever outright say that he's out to necessarily kill the humans. He's just trying to drive them out.
Yeah, but his way of doing it is just really twisted.
Yeah. Other things that so there are some things that have stuck in my mind as being part of Beetlejuice that really aren't, like the whole shrunken head guy. I
Yeah,
I think that there was more than one of them in the cartoon, and it's actually a very small part of the movie here.
yeah, yeah, and uh, I will say the probably the creepiest part of it for me was like when Beetlejuice tries to marry Lydia. It's like, okay, she's like 14 or 15 years old.
At best.
Yeah, like, okay.
Yeah. Um, and I will say that I get the feeling there's just a lot of things in here that either Tim Burton found appealing or the screenwriter found appealing. Like they
Mhm.
have a lot of old mambo music that just
Yeah,
pops up as a recurring element.
yeah. The whole Deo,
Yeah.
yeah, that whole sequence in there. You pointed out too the one guy looked like he was trying really hard not to crack up, and they're
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. During that scene, there was like one bit where Glenn Shattuck's playing Otho, the flamboyant interior decorator.
Yeah,
He like one point he was clearly smirking in the middle of this long dance sequence where Beetlejuice like possesses everybody and forces them to dance along with "Ayo, Deo,
Deo.
daylight come man."
Yeah. um, what was the actor's name again?
Glenn Shattuck's.
Glenn Shaddix. I recognized his voice uh,
Let's
when he
oh,
started talking. I think
oh,
he's done a lot of voiceover stuff.
he was the mayor in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
He was in the 2001 version of Planet of the Apes.
Mm, mm,
Let's just zip through here. Kingdom. Oh, okay. I was a little surprised that he was in Kingdom Hearts 2 until I saw he was as the mayor of Halloween Town, so that tracks.
yeah.
He was a couple of characters in the Teen Titans cartoon, though it was the fifth season I didn't really watch.
Yeah.
Um, he was in Justice League Unlimited as Steven Mandragora, but that's not a character I recognize the name of. He's been Clue Master in the Batman, so he's been around. There's just a lot of small voices.
Yeah, well, I recognize that he has a very distinct, like, deep
Hmm.
voice. So that was kind of like, oh, think he's been in a few cartoons I've watched. Um,
Huh, he was also the mayor in the TV series Rocket Power, which you know what? He actually has a good voice for a kids movie mayor because he sounds deep and like you could kind of think of him as having like a commanding voice, but at the same time he has some ludicrousness to him.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the movie overall. I think is enjoyable enough. I don't know. Not entirely sure why I avoided it for so long. My mother and father may have had a hand in that somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is, there's a lot of people who this wouldn't be up their alley, but I think this might be like the most approachable one of these horror comedies outside of maybe Adam's Family.
Mm,
And the reason, of course, okay, so for me, I liked this much better than when we watched the Adams Family movie from the 90s. Um,
yeah,
and I think it is just because, so it had a lot of that same sort of humor where it's like bad is good as and good is bad, where, you know, Beetlejuice is like, he sees this mouse as valuable, like, I'll trade this mouse or whatever it was.
yeah, yeah, and like the scene when Adam and Barbara when they turn their heads in, the claymation
Mhm.
thing, like pulling his head out and then doing all that, and then their caseworker's like, "Oh, you look great."
Yeah, right. Well, the thing is like that was sparing. Like the main point of view characters were still um, this normal subdued couple who just were in this an odd situation.
Yeah,
Um, and maybe that's why I liked it better was just because it did have that grounding of having these two characters. At the same time, I can see why, as memory serves, they were completely absent from the cartoon version because they get in the way of Lydia and Beetlejuice having wacky adventures.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in a story like this, you kind of have to have somebody from the outside with who has some normalcy to kind of just point out the absurdity of everything that's going on around them.
Yep. Yeah. Nope. Definitely agreed.
Yeah.
Visually speaking, again, this was a uh, definitely very imaginative. There are a couple of green screen effects that, at least on HBO Max's stream, were a little bit obvious now, but I'm sure they looked fine on analog.
Yeah, yeah. There were a couple of parts that looked a little rough. Yeah, yeah, especially the parts on Saturn where it's like, yeah, it definitely looks like a green screen there or blue
Yep.
screen or whatever they were using.
Or at the end when Beetlejuice gets his head shrunk.
Oh yeah,
Um, there was another thought that I had there in terms of the. Oh yeah, speaking of the shrunken head guys, uh, so Daniel, on Max, are you cheap like me and get the ad-supported version, or do you pay for the full fat version?
oh, I've got the full fat version.
So for this and Horizon, they were playing a bunch of commercials for Google featuring the Pinhead people, and there were multiples of them, and like there was like their heavy tie-in with Beetlejuice.
Huh.
So uh, I thought that was kind of interesting that this minor element in this 30-year-old movie was seen as something you could hang the hat of a advertising campaign on.
Yeah.
Which my understanding is that this thing was like dominated cable for a few years there.
I seem to recall that. Yeah. Like, yeah, you turn on like you know TBS or you know WGN or something like that, and it would be on there. Yeah.
Yep. And you can see why. It was a hit at the time, and it's the sequel is a hit in theaters today. And
Mm.
meh, I don't know, maybe I'll drag my carcass to a movie theater and watch this. Well, I just watch the sequel just to see if I agree with the Mez I was hearing on Midnight's Edge.
Mm. Yeah. I may just wait till streaming.
That's fair. That's
Hmm.
totally fair.
Yeah.
You know what else is fair? We didn't do a Horizon and American Saga length podcast this week, so I think we've
Yes.
said all we need to say about Beetlejuice. If
Yes, indeed.
if it sounds even remotely up your alley, go watch it now.
Yes, indeed.
You can stream it on Max.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it as always.
Indeed.
Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because if we get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, we'll watch The Acolyte. Yeah.
You know what? Let's make a similar boast that might be more achievable.
Okay.
If we hit 200 subs, we have to watch Agatha all along
Okay. Yeah, that seems more achievable. Yeah. So yeah. So if we get to 200, we'll watch Agatha all along.
and hate ourselves every step of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and then yeah, but yeah, and oh, and hit the bell for notifications. All that good jazz, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Night, everyone.
Night, everyone.